There are many techniques for sharpening dental hand instruments. Although the methods may vary, properly sharpening these instruments will ensure that they work efficiently, reduce hand fatigue, and lengthen the life of hand instruments. In this video, we will discuss the importance of proper maintenance of these valuable dental instruments. It's important for us to know how to properly sharpen dental hand instruments. And here today we have Tammy Smith with us, who's a veterinary technician specialist in dentistry, and she's going to help us know how to do this properly. So Tammy, why is it important that we know how to properly sharpen our dental instruments?
So we want to make sure our instruments are nice and sharp, particularly the elevators that the doctor uses for oral surgery when he's extracting teeth. Obviously they work more efficiently if they're sharp. For our hand instruments, we certainly remove calculus more efficiently if they're nice and sharp, which gives us less hand fatigue, more efficient tartar removal, less trauma to our patients, and just a better tactile feel when we're using those instruments in the subgingival areas where we can't necessarily see.
It's important that we have sharp instruments when we're working in the oral cavity of our patients. If we work with dull instruments, it leads to several factors that are undesirable. One is that it makes us tired. We develop hand fatigue when we're using instruments because we're trying to make the instrument work in a way that it's not meant to work when it's dull. The other thing is that if we're using dull instruments, it takes more force on our part, and sometimes that can result in injury to the patient.
Today we have a flat Arkansas stone and a conical Arkansas stone. There are other types of stones. We would use an India stone for more coarse sharpening. If our doctor maybe dinged the end of an instrument or had a divot out of it, we would use an India stone to smooth out that divot before we sharpened the instrument. If we had a ceramic stone, we would moisten it with water. Since we have an Arkansas stone today, we're going to use sharpening oil. So when we take our oil, we just put a couple drops on the surface of the stone, and then we just want to distribute them over the surface of the stone. I'm using a gauze sponge, but you could use paper towel or something of that nature. So we're going to start with our curette. So you already talked about these instruments. Essentially, we want to sharpen the sharp surface. So we know that sharp surface is kind of to the inside of this instrument. So when I go to sharpen this instrument, I don't want to have any sort of gap underneath the instrument. I want to get that working end or the sharp surface flat onto the stone, and then I pull this towards me. With sharpening, there are about as many different ways to do it and teach it as I've ever heard people teaching it. So there's lots of different options for this. You can hold the instrument still and move the stone, or move the instrument and hold the stone still. And I'm just going to pull this to me several times. If I feel that I've run up kind of a burr on the edge of this, I can use my conical stone. We don't want to use the conical stone to sharpen this because it has a tendency to change the shape of the instrument.
The conical stone is used to remove burrs after the sharpening process. We need to be a little bit careful with that stone because it can be easily broken.
We want to use this acrylic stick to test the sharpness of our instrument. If we didn't have one of these available, we could use a syringe casing. I'm going to place the instrument on the stick and pull it towards me, and it should generate a little curl of the acrylic if the instrument is nice and sharp.
There are different types of sharpening stones and different methods to sharpen your instruments. Individual preference determines which methods you use. The most important thing is that your instruments get sharpened on a regular basis.
When we talk about sharpening the scalers, it's very similar, although this has more sharp edges. So we sharpen this side and pull it towards us, and then this side and pull it towards us.
So how would you sharpen one of the elevators?
So with these particular elevators, if we examine them, we can see that the outside of this is somewhat blunt, but the inside has a nice sharp edge. So we want to sharpen the side that is already sharp, otherwise we're kind of repurposing this instrument. So with this particular one, we can roll the conical stone along it from side to side. And typically, or we can use our flat stone again. And again, we want to get as much of that surface flat on the stone as we can. So we also want to rotate this up until we get that sharp surface here. Also, if we run up a burr on this instrument, we want to use our conical stone to smooth that out. Sometimes we'll get kind of a rough edge there, so we can roll this along.
Inappropriate sharpening technique can lead to personal injury. That's why it's extremely important that anyone sharpening instruments uses proper technique.
So as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of different methods for sharpening instruments. What I have shown you is my preferred method.
Well, thank you for showing us how you sharpen your instruments. As you can see, keeping your instruments sharp will help ensure that they continue to perform like new and prevent hand fatigue.